I never thought a simple restaurant fundraiser would become the night everything in my life split open. But looking back now, the signs were there long before she vanished from the table. My name is Ryan Walker, 38, security systems technician. I spend my days crawling through attics, running fiber, installing cameras for people who want their lives to feel a little safer. Ironically, I never imagined I'd end up using the same skills to expose my own wife. The gala was my project for months, a fundraiser dinner for a local youth shelter. The restaurant owner asked if I'd help coordinate the security layout since they expected a big turnout, and I gladly volunteered. Felt good doing something meaningful. My wife Jenna, 36, arrived irritated the moment we stepped inside. She hated community events, hated sitting still, hated being around anyone who didn't dress like they lived in corporate boardrooms. She worked in pharmaceutical sales and liked to remind me in subtle ways that her world was shinier, faster, more important. But tonight was supposed to be ours. She'd promised to support me. For the first 10 minutes she pretended. Then the mask slipped, her bored sighs, her tight smile, her second glass of wine disappearing too quickly. When people asked her about her job, she lit up. When they asked about mine, she looked at her phone. The turning point came when she leaned toward me and whispered, "Do we really have to sit here all night? Ryan, these people don't even know what ambition is." I kept my voice level. "Just try. It's one night." She rolled her eyes, drained the rest of her glass and said, "Fresh air. I need fresh air," before grabbing her clutch and walking toward the back hallway that led to the outdoor balcony. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Something tightened in my chest, the way it does right before a smoke alarm goes off, when you know something is wrong before anyone else hears it. I excused myself from the table and went looking for her. The hallway behind the kitchen was dim, lit only by a buzzing exit sign. I pushed open the heavy door to the balcony and froze. Jenna wasn't alone. She was in the corner near the railing, partly hidden by a tall outdoor heater. And she wasn't standing politely. Her back was arched, her hands gripping the lapels of another man's blazer, pulling him close while his hands moved under her coat. His voice was low, hungry. Hers was worse, soft laughter I hadn't heard from her in months. Took me a second to recognize him. Mark, her regional manager. Married. 2 kids. She'd spoken about him like he was some brilliant mentor. I stood there a moment, not breathing, not moving, my mind refusing to catch up with what my eyes saw. Jenna gasped when she noticed me. Mark stepped back, smoothing his shirt, muttering something about a misunderstanding, already retreating like a coward. Jenna staggered toward me, still flushed. "Ryan, wait. It's not what it looks like." But the truth was sitting there in front of me like crisp video footage. The angle, the light, the touch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask questions. Something colder took over. "Stay here," I said. "Don't follow me." She blinked, confused, then frightened by the tone. I walked straight to the service counter inside the restaurant where the head waiter, a 20-something kid named Leo, stood drying glasses. "I need the balcony camera," I told him quietly. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I figured you might ask. I saw her go out there with him. I didn't know if I should say anything." He pulled out a tablet linked to the security feed. One swipe, one timestamp, and the footage appeared. Crystal clear. 37 seconds. Enough. More than enough. I watched it once. Just once. Then I told Leo, "Send it to my phone." When he did, I felt something inside me harden into certainty. I walked back toward the table, past the guests, past the noise, past the life I thought I had. Jenna was waiting near the hallway, eyes wet, breath unsteady. "Ryan, please let me explain. When we get home," I said quietly, "you're sleeping in the guest room. Tomorrow morning, you leave." That was the moment she realized I wasn't bluffing. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Because what happened after this was only the beginning. Jenna didn't speak during the entire ride home. She sat pressed against the passenger door, breathing in sharp, uneven bursts, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I kept my eyes on the road. Not once did I look at her. I didn't trust myself to. If I looked, I might see the same expression she wore out on that balcony, and I wasn't sure I could hold my composure through that. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she reached for my arm the second I stepped out. "Ryan, please, let's talk inside." "Guest room," I said. Nothing more. I walked past her, opened the door, and went straight to the kitchen. I heard her footsteps behind me, slow and shaky, like she was stepping through debris after an earthquake. She hovered near the island. It wasn't planned. I had too much to drink. He kissed me first. I pushed him away. "You didn't push him away," I interrupted, still not raising my voice. "I saw the footage, Jenna." She flinched like the footage had physically struck her. "Please don't do this. We can go to therapy. We can work on it." "I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm so sorry." I opened the drawer where we kept spare keys and slid one across the counter. "Guest room. Now." She stared at the key for a long moment before picking it up with trembling fingers and walking down the hall. The door clicked shut softly. I stayed in the kitchen until I heard nothing but silence. Then I took out my phone and opened the balcony video again. I forced myself to watch a second time. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed clarity. Needed to scrape the last layer of denial off my skin. When the clip ended, I noticed something that hadn't registered the first time. Jenna's hand reaching for Mark before he touched her. That tiny detail burned more than anything else. I went to sleep on the couch, though sleep never came. My mind replayed the night. Her sighs at the restaurant, her impatience, her sudden fresh air, and now, the brutal confirmation of everything I'd been ignoring for months. At around 3:15 a.m., I sat up, grabbed my laptop, and opened her purse, which she'd left on the armchair. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't going to pretend blind loyalty anymore. Inside was the AirTag I'd slipped into her bag weeks ago, after one too many late work dinners. Didn't align with her calendar. I opened the tracking history. The pattern was unmistakable. Same hotel, same nights, same hours, repeated for months. I clicked on one entry from 2 weeks ago, the one she swore was a mandatory company motivation training. The AirTag showed her stopping for 43 minutes at a luxury hotel before ever arriving at the supposed venue. I felt a coldness settle into my chest. I dug deeper. Her Uber history showed drop-offs at an address she'd never mentioned. Receipts in her email inbox flagged as work dinners had 2 guests on the ticket. And then the worst part, screenshots in the HR-only Slack channel, saved to her downloads folder, where she and Mark joked about needing another private strategy session. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. It wasn't one mistake on a balcony. It was a pattern, a routine, a parallel life built behind my back while I fixed leaky cameras and tried to make our home run smoothly. At 6 a.m., I made coffee and sat at the table waiting for her. When she finally walked into the kitchen, eyes red and hair messy from crying, she froze when she saw the laptop open. "What is that?" Her voice cracked. I turned the screen toward her. "Proof," I said. "More than 30 entries. More than one hotel. More than one night." She pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking. "Ryan, I can explain." "No," I said. "You can't. Because explanations would require honesty, and you used the truth on someone else." She sank into the chair across from me, completely deflated. "What do you want to do?" she whispered. I looked at her like she was a stranger who walked into my house by mistake. "First," I said, "you'll call your sister. You're staying with her for now. You need to pack." Her eyes widened. "Today?" "Yes, today." She tried to protest, reaching across the table, but I pushed the chair back before her hand came close. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." While she packed, I gathered every piece of digital evidence, screenshots, receipts, location logs, the balcony video. I organized them into folders with chronological labels. During all of this, I felt strangely calm, as if my emotions had frozen into something sharp and functional. By noon, Jenna stood at the doorway with 2 suitcases. "Ryan, I love you. I made a mistake." I didn't answer. I just opened the door. She dragged the suitcases down the porch steps with shaking hands and got into her sister's car without another word. The moment the car turned the corner, the weight of everything finally hit me, but instead of breaking down, I opened my laptop again. It was time to prepare for the next step. The consequences were no longer mine to protect her from. The house felt heavier after Jenna left, as if her absence still pressed against the air in every room. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by folders, receipts, screenshots, and location logs, organizing everything with the same methodical precision I used when designing security systems for clients. I wasn't collecting this to punish her. I was collecting it because the truth was the only anchor I had left, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story into something it wasn't. By Tuesday morning, I was sitting in the office of a family law attorney named Dana Prescott, a sharp woman in her 40s with a calm, no-nonsense demeanor. She scanned through the evidence slowly, pausing only when she reached the balcony footage. She exhaled through her nose like she'd seen this too many times. "Mr. Walker," she said finally, folding her hands, "your documentation is thorough, very thorough. The AirTag logs, the Uber routes, the receipts. This is a pattern of misuse of marital assets and misconduct inside her company. And the fact that the man is her direct superior, this is big. I just want the truth on record," I said, "and I want things to be stable for our son." She nodded. "You'll need to prepare for the possibility she'll claim you're overreacting or invading her privacy. But none of this was obtained illegally. The hotel receipts and work reimbursements alone are enough to raise red flags. As for custody," she added, flipping to the Slack screenshots, "judges don't like when parents spend nights lying about their whereabouts. It shows poor judgment." Hearing that felt strange. Like part of me wanted to defend Jenna, and another part wanted someone else to finally acknowledge what I'd carried quietly for months. I walked out of Dana's office with a folder of instructions, formal paperwork, and a surreal feeling that my life had shifted into a new gear. I couldn't slow down even if I wanted to. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk, please." It was Mark's wife, Lisa. I didn't respond. I didn't know her anything. But an hour later, she sent another message. "I'm sorry to reach out. I found emails." I know. I deleted the number. The intertwining of our lives was messy enough. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Jenna's company's HR department. "Please confirm availability for an internal review meeting regarding recent concerns." I stared at the screen. It didn't take a detective to understand what triggered it. Someone had noticed. Maybe a coworker saw Jenna and Mark leaving together. Maybe the balcony footage had reached management. Maybe Lisa had started her own digging. I didn't reply. It wasn't my problem. Jenna called 3 times that day. I ignored all 3. Then her sister texted me. "She's not okay. She says she needs to explain." But explanations didn't undo anything. That night around 10 p.m., I received a long email from Jenna, paragraphs of apologies, excuses, self-blame, sudden revelations about being lost and overwhelmed, declarations that the affair didn't mean anything. But buried halfway down the email was the sentence that told the truth. "I thought I could handle both parts of my life without hurting you. Both parts of my life." She had written that like she was talking about a hobby she'd picked up on weekends. I closed the email and didn't respond. 2 days later, I was called into HR at the restaurant. The manager, a middle-aged guy named Vincent, sat across from me with a nervous expression. "Ryan, look, something happened the night of the fundraiser." A member of the staff filed an incident report about what he saw. I stayed silent. He tapped a pen against the desk. "The balcony camera caught some things. We're required by law to log it if a guest may have been placed in an unsafe situation. I wanted you to know the footage exists in our system in case anyone asks. So it wasn't just in my phone. It was part of an official record. That meant Jenna's company could request it if they opened a formal investigation, which, from the email she'd gotten, they probably already had." Saturday morning, around 9, Jenna showed up at the house. I watched her through the glass door before deciding whether to answer. She looked different. Hair tied back messily, dark circles under her eyes, No polished corporate glow. Just a woman stripped down to the consequences she'd crafted. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She swallowed hard before speaking. "They suspended me," she said. "HR wants more information. They said they got reports." I didn't react. She wrung her hands. "They want the balcony footage." I met her eyes. "Then they'll get it," I said. "You're not going to protect me?" The question came out small, almost childish. "I did protect you," I said, voice level. "For years. From bills, from stress, from your own choices. But not from yourself. That's not my job." She closed her eyes and a tear slid down her cheek. "Ryan, they're going to involve corporate legal. Mark's wife is threatening to go public. And they want to review expense reports. If they tie me to him—" "Jenna," I said softly, "they will tie you to him." She steadied herself on the railing. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't," I answered. "The only thing left is honesty." She let out a broken sound, the kind that isn't quite a sob, but something deeper, more defeated. After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time. Not out of grief, not out of anger, but out of a strange, simmering clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't living under the fog of excuses. Actions were aligning with consequences. The next step was coming, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of it. The following week unfolded like a slow-motion collapse, not on my side of the line, but entirely on hers. It started Monday morning when I received a call from the HR investigations office at Jenna's company. A clipped, professional woman asked if I could confirm whether I was present at the restaurant fundraiser where an incident involving 2 employees may have taken place. I told her I couldn't comment. Not out of loyalty, those days were dead, but because I wasn't going to involve myself in their internal politics. The truth didn't need my help anymore. It was already spreading. By noon, Jenna sent me a frantic string of messages. They're interviewing everyone. Mark was removed from a project. His wife hired a lawyer. They pulled the expense reports. I put my phone down each time and went back to work. Installing a home security system felt strangely grounding. Bolting cameras into clean drywall, running cables with exact measurements, labeling everything so the client could understand. Systems made sense. People didn't. By Wednesday, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is corporate legal for Ravenshore Pharma. You may be contacted for verification of venue footage." Immediately after that, "Please disregard the previous message." And 5 minutes later, "Our team is reviewing all available evidence." The panic behind those retractions was obvious. The company was scrambling. They were trying to assess how deep the damage went without admitting liability. Later that evening, I found out just how deep it went. A former co-worker of Jenna's, someone she used to complain about endlessly, messaged me privately. "I'm sorry to reach out, but I thought you should know. The investigation isn't just about the affair. They discovered misreported hotel expenses, some labeled as regional outreach that don't match travel logs. It's going to get ugly." I thanked her, though I didn't feel vindication. What I felt was confirmation. A cold, factual click that Jenna's world wasn't collapsing because of me. It was collapsing because it had been built on shortcuts and lies that were finally catching up. Thursday morning was the hearing with my attorney, our first court appearance to establish temporary custody arrangements. Jenna arrived looking like a shadow of the woman I used to know. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun that didn't hide the exhaustion on her face. She carried a folder stuffed with loose papers like someone trying to assemble a parachute out of napkins while falling. She didn't meet my eyes. Inside the small courtroom, everything felt narrow and bright. My attorney, Dana, went through our evidence with the same calm precision she had in her office. The balcony footage, the hotel receipts, the AirTag logs, the Uber data, the Slack screenshots, and a summary of how many nights Jenna had claimed to be working late or traveling while the tracking showed her elsewhere. Jenna's attorney argued she'd been under pressure, that the company had high expectations, that she felt isolated, that her mistakes didn't reflect her ability to parent. But the judge's questions were aimed like darts. Were you untruthful about your whereabouts on multiple occasions? Were company funds used for personal reasons? Is the individual involved in this matter your direct supervisor? Jenna's voice shook as she answered each one. No excuses, no narratives, just small, painful confessions spoken into a room full of strangers. When the session ended, the judge issued a provisional ruling. Primary temporary custody to me, with Jenna receiving alternating weekends pending the outcome of her company's investigation and the court's review of her time availability. Jenna went pale. She looked at her attorney as if she couldn't understand how her life had moved from firm ground to freefall in such a short time. Outside the courthouse, she approached me cautiously. "Ryan, you're taking Max away from me." "No," I said. "You did that when you prioritized everything but him. I'm just confirming the reality you created." She grabbed my sleeve, desperate. "We can fix this." "Stop saying we," I replied quietly, pulling my arm away. "There hasn't been a we for a long time." Friday was the breaking point. Jenna's company officially placed both her and Mark on unpaid leave. I didn't hear about it from her. I heard it from a friend who worked in the industry and followed corporate gossip like weather reports. "It's all over the office," she told me. "Internal review, misconduct, possible code of conduct violations. Someone even leaked that balcony footage exists." That night, Jenna showed up at my door again. I didn't open it. She sat on the porch for 10 minutes, then 15, sobbing into her hands. I could see her through the living room window, but I didn't move. She eventually left, shoulders hunched, clutching her jacket around herself as though the cold was coming from the inside. Saturday morning brought the next wave. An email from the company announcing a mandatory ethics training for all employees due to recent leadership breaches. Translation: they were preparing to fire someone, maybe multiple someones, and they wanted to demonstrate they'd taken corrective action. Jenna didn't message me all day. Not once. The silence was louder than any of her apologies. On Sunday evening, I received an email from Lisa, Mark's wife. Just one sentence. "Thank you for not lying for them." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. I didn't respond. People kept looking for closure from me, but I wasn't part of their collapses. I was just a witness who finally turned on the lights. By the end of that week, it was obvious the next phase was coming, consequences shifting from investigations to outcomes. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something I hadn't expected. Clarity. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted the truth to finish what it had already started. By the time the final decisions came down, the damage was already done, and nothing I could have said or withheld would have changed the trajectory Jenna set for herself. It was a Wednesday morning when I received the email from my attorney. "Company has terminated both parties. Investigation concluded. Official statements will be sent to counsel." Just like that, the life Jenna had been so proud of, the career she used as a weapon whenever she wanted to remind me how small my world was, evaporated. When I picked up our son from school that afternoon, he asked why Mom hadn't been around much lately. I kept my voice even careful. "She's figuring some things out," I said. "But you're safe. I'm here." He nodded, trusting me completely, and climbed into the back seat. That trust was worth more than anything I'd lost. Over the next few months, the legal process moved in slow, grinding circles. Jenna tried to negotiate, then backed down. Tried to apologize, then spiraled again. Her attorney attempted to challenge the custody arrangement, claiming stress and temporary lapses in judgment. But the timeline didn't help her. Too many nights unaccounted for. Too many receipts approved by her boss. Too many private messages contradicting her polished corporate persona. Throughout it all, I stayed calm, quiet, steady. I didn't argue. I didn't insult her. I didn't shout. In fact, the silence seemed to frighten her more than anger ever could have. One evening, after a mediation session where her attorney practically begged her to stop contradicting her own written evidence, she approached me in the parking lot. "Ryan, do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No. Hate would mean I cared about what you think of me. I don't anymore." She swallowed hard, backing away like the words hit deeper than anything I could have shouted. Our son adjusted faster than I expected. He liked the routine. He liked knowing exactly who would pick him up, who cooked dinner, who helped with homework. He liked the stability. Eventually, under the court schedule, Jenna had alternating weekends again, though even then she sometimes canceled at the last minute, claiming she was emotionally overwhelmed. I didn't fight her. I didn't push. I simply logged everything and kept giving our son the consistency she couldn't. 6 months after the fundraiser, I got promoted. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was steady, honest, something I built with my own hands. Word had spread through town about what happened. Not because of me, but because small communities have a way of connecting the dots even when no one says a word aloud. I became the guy who handled everything with dignity. The guy who didn't blow up or break down. The guy who quietly protected his kid. People respected that. 1 year after that night, I ran into Jenna completely by accident outside the hardware store. She looked smaller somehow, like someone who kept walking straight into the consequences she thought she could outrun. Her hair was duller, her clothes simpler, her posture slightly folded inward. She stared at me for a moment, then said, "You look good." I nodded. "You too," I said out of politeness, though it wasn't true. She hesitated. "Are you happy?" The question felt strange, like a memory asking for permission to fade. I thought about our home, the warm light in the evenings, the drawings our son taped to the refrigerator, the quiet mornings making breakfast, the stability I'd rebuilt from the ground up. I thought about the woman I'd been seeing for the past few months, someone gentle and grounded who never treated my time like something disposable. "Yeah," I said finally, "I am." Her eyes shimmered, not with anger, but with the kind of sadness that only comes when someone realizes the door they kicked open is the same one that can't be closed again. "Ryan," she whispered, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "I know," I said, "but you chose it anyway." She stepped closer. "If I could go back, you'd make the same choices," I interrupted quietly. "Because those choices weren't accidents. They were who you were then." She looked down at the pavement. "Do you ever think about what we were?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I think about what we are now." She wiped her cheek and took a step back when she realized I wasn't offering anything else. Not comfort, not hope, not a bridge back to the life she lost. Before she turned to leave, she asked one last question, one that probably haunted her at night. "Why didn't you fight me harder? Why didn't you yell? Why didn't you try to stop me?" I met her eyes and gave her the truth she'd never been ready to hear. "Because you chose your life. I just let the consequences do the rest." She didn't reply. She just nodded, understanding finally settling where denial had lived for so long, and walked away down the sidewalk, disappearing into a quieter, smaller world than the one she used to chase. That evening, as I watched our son work on a school project at the kitchen table, humming to himself with the innocent focus only kids have, I felt a kind of peace. Not the dramatic kind, not the movie scene kind, but the steady, deep kind that comes from knowing you survived something meant to break you. When I tucked him into bed, he hugged me tightly. "Dad," he said, "I like how things are now." I kissed the top of his head. "Me too, buddy." And that was it. No revenge. No dramatic ending. Just a new life built on truth instead of illusion, on stability instead of chaos, on quiet dignity instead of noise. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.